introduce today's moderator. Daniel Witteveen, leads IBM Resiliency Services Strategy and Portfolio team. His team of global experts represents the best of the best when it comes to the global advancement and business performance of a wide variety of cloud-based services. And Daniel and his team have participated in various publications and speaking engagements focused on resiliency services. Specializing in the hybrid IT environments, optimizing public and private cloud and on-premise solutions, they provide the most efficient, cost, and business outcomes-based solution mapping directly to IBM's clients' strategic imperatives. Daniel, go ahead and take it away.
Sam, thank you very much, and team, thank you for attending the call here today. It looks like there's about 100 of us on the line, and it looks like that's growing quite rapidly here. Our CEO, not too long ago, made a quote that kind of lives with us on a daily basis, which is, data is the new natural resource. And when you think about that, you think about all the decisions we make using data on a daily basis, it's quite impressive. And that data is growing exponentially. And the managing of that data, the complexity of these environments is growing exponentially. I was just, it wasn't that long ago where we're all just backing up data to USB drives, to tape drives, right? And then we moved to virtual tape libraries, and we moved to disk replication, and now we have data literally all over the place, in the cloud, born in the cloud, backing out of the cloud, all over. So this is a very timely topic as we focus on data protection, not just backing up that data, but making sure your data is secured and protected. We have today 3 speakers. We're going to see fourth one on the list here is going to help with the slides. But first, as mentioned, my name is Daniel Witteveen. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Portfolio for IBM Resiliency Services. I'll spend a little bit of time about our offering and portfolio and use of Spectrum Protect in a bit, but we're going to start off with Vinny Choinski, who is a lab analyst at Enterprise Strategy Group. Vinny has with him over 20 years of data protection experience, and it's got a lot of good details in the slide ahead about cloud, the use of cloud, and how it's impacting. Then we're going to pass it over to Greg Van Hise, who's going to talk about Spectrum Protect specifically. And Greg has been with the Spectrum Protect business and focuses on the strategy and a master inventor within IBM, which is a pretty impressive title and accomplishment. So we're very excited to have Greg talk about his extensive career in storage and what he's seeing from a data protection perspective. Devin and Michael Barton will help us through slide management here. Any questions you may have that pop up through the pop-up box, Devin and Michael will help participate in, answer either via that box or in the Q&A section. So with that, Vinny, I would like to pass it over for you to get started here.
Thanks, Daniel. My pleasure. So the title slide, you can flip to the next slide, and I'll give a quick introduction of ESG for those that don't know who we are. We're an IT analyst firm. We have research and strategy company. We've been in business since 1999, corporate headquarters here in Milford, Massachusetts. Research is designed to help IT professionals, business professionals, IT vendors, and channel partners with their decision making. I'm going to share some of the examples of our research in this webinar, and we cover all the major IT disciplines, including cloud, data protection, and security. We deliver analyst services, market research, technical and economic validation, consulting, and custom content. I focus most of my time on the technical and economic validation portion of our business. Next slide. So the first slide comes from our 2016 IT Spending Intention Survey. And this kind of measures sentiment, IT spending sentiment across the industry. So even though security has edged out cost reduction as a top business initiative impacting IT spending over the last couple of years, it's still important for most organizations. This chart shows the adoption of cloud service for cost containment. The number of organizations using cloud service as a way to contain IT costs has more than doubled. In 2009 it was 13%, and 2016 is up to 30%, 32%. So ESG has been providing the same list of 9 cost containment reduction methods since 2009, and you can see how cloud moved from number 9 to number 1 over time. So next slide, please. This slide's pretty straightforward. Our research shows that data protection and archive and disaster recovery as the #1 and #2 use cases for cloud infrastructure. Interesting to see primary storage for files as #4. We all use cloud probably at a consumer level and a little bit in business, but oftentimes just general storage is not always the most cost efficient. So we're seeing data protection and archiving and disaster recovery at the top of the list for use cases. Next slide. So to put this slide in a little more context, there's a lot of ways to send data to a cloud service. And this slide doesn't mean that cloud-powered data protection is or isn't the primary backup solution for our survey participants, but it does show that cloud-powered data protection solutions are in use in a good number of environments. There's an early lead for backup as a service and DR as services currently in use. Around 40% of the respondents are using DRAS or BAS somewhere in their environments. And a fourth of the respondents are also using cloud storage as part of their on-premise data protection solution. If you look a little closer, the storage as a service for data protection or disk to cloud model also tells a good story. A fourth of our survey participants are currently using cloud storage today with their data protection solutions. Another fourth are planning to use it, and this often means that they have executive buy-in or funding planned for the next year. Another fourth are currently or planning to use it that aren't currently planning to use it but are interested. So what we see here is that 3 out of 4 respondents are open to this idea, currently planning or interested, pretty much mainstream by definition. So we're not seeing cloud as an edge type of solution. We're seeing it move into the mainstream in the data protection space. If you could flip to the next slide, that'd be great. So what are the biggest drivers for cloud data protection services? We're seeing the ability to store data remotely for things like DR. The belief that it will be more cost effective than an in-house solution, and that it can provide better recovery capabilities. My slides here kind of build the case for why people are using it and what the challenges are. So if you could flip to the next slide, please. So these are the things that are preventing or causing concern as people just decide to use cloud-based data protection. The #1 and 2 concerns are security and compliance, as you can see below that. So maybe interweaved with giving up control of the environment a little bit. Then comes recovery. This is mostly related to speeds, being concerned about the speed of recovery and the availability concerns. And network connectivity and the amount of data that needs to be transferred kind of weave into this, and obviously cost concerns for the amount of data that is stored. If you could flip to the next slide, that'd be great. So with these concerns in mind, we wanted to measure the sentiment of people's results. So this slide actually shows after deciding to implement cloud-based data protection, what people are actually experiencing. So the top concerns and the top things preventing organizations don't quite play out. Improved reliability and the recoverability of backups is one of the benefits that people see when they start to move some of their backup environment into the cloud. Improved security and a reduction in costs, and you can see that there's a number of cost-related benefits: power and cooling, reduction in personnel costs, and so there's a number of different things that are related to the cost containment. So if you could flip to the next slide, that'd be great. So we've moved from kind of why people are moving to the cloud, the benefits, some of the challenges, some of the benefits, some of the things that they're seeing. we wanted to take a look at just modern data protection in the enterprise. And obviously, IT environments are constantly growing and evolving, which means that today's data protection solutions have to have the flexibility and agility to keep pace. New technology comes along often with the promise it can fix everything, but in reality, it usually becomes a component of an environment, right? Part of the overall ecosystem that can include disk, cloud, and even tape. Each one of these components has unique capabilities. So, disk drives, we see all these components, the disk, cloud, and tape, private, public, and hybrid, all becoming components of a complete cloud solution, right? So key options for a complete solution, disk devices still provide great targets for small block and random I/O. Tape devices are ideal for large block sequential I/O and have a pretty good economic value. You can store a lot of data on a pretty cheap cartridge. So we still see people archiving long-term with tape in a lot of environments and using it for large blocks, sequential I/O. The cloud can help me, immediately can help meet DR requirements. And then, public clouds allow more control of the infrastructure resources overall, your network, your pipes, your servers. Public clouds can help with infrastructure scalability without capital investment. And then hybrid clouds can help deliver the best of both worlds. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest challenges is moving data back and forth from the cloud. So if you don't, especially when you don't own or control the pipe. Really, this is a conversation about changing the process. And what we see here is that solutions that really allow flexibility to move to cloud either in part or fully are solutions that start with the ability to handle perpetual file level incrementals, whether that's application data level, application data level, file level. Source side deduplication plays a big role in being able to manage network challenges. It eliminates repeating of data patterns and only transfers the data that is new. And this effectively helps increase throughput by reducing the amount of data that has to be transferred. Oftentimes, solutions have either deduplication or compression. Sometimes these both, but compression is a similar type of effect where it removes statistically redundant or empty space in the data set, shrinking the data set and again effectively improving throughput by reducing the amount of data that needs to be transferred over the network. And then critically is the ability to support newer protocols, more efficient protocols, and that's the REST architecture. It can help improve performance and eliminate the overhead of legacy protocols that are often quite chatty and cause latency and delays just with acknowledgments and data transfer. Next slide. So ESG has been following Spectrum Protect for quite some time. In our latest validation, we were impressed with its modernization aspects that include improved ease of use, virtualized environment protection, improved cloud-based protection options, and workflow management. This slide builds a bit, but part of my background, I've spent a lot of time architecting and actually managing data protection in large environments, including Spectrum Protect, or at the time I was doing it, it was called TSM. It's always been a powerful solution, but not always the easiest to manage. So this is a build slide. If you could hit next on here. We're really excited about the way Operations Center has been integrated into the product. This is just a top-level view from a screenshot captured during our last validation. It just shows all the components that are included now in Operations Center that help ease management. If you could hit next again. Here we have the integration with VMware. Again, built right into the vCenter, allowing virtual administrators the ability to manage their backups directly from an interface that they know. You still have the capabilities with inside TSM, of course, but now you can move some of those capabilities to the actual VM storage administrator, if not the management of it. At least they have a window into their data protection, make sure it's happening the way they want it, so you can monitor and manage that directly. We also, it's not included in this deck, but took a look at Hyper-V capabilities, and again, we were impressed with the continued expansion into different virtual data protection schemas. Next again, please. This is related to workflow management. And as we were going through testing, we launched some some backups, and obviously this kind of shows the workflow, and you have the ability to adjust schedules and balance your workflow and make sure that things are happening. So it shows in the light blue that the backup load, and so dark blue shows the overall workload, and the purple shows that we started to kick in some replication. What you hope to see as you, and they give you the tools, Spectrum Protect gives you the tools to do this, is a balanced type scenario after you run for a while and your replication catches up. So it gives you the ability to monitor, adjust, and schedule your workflows, because replication is a key component to private, public, and hybrid type clouds, right? I need to make sure that if I'm moving data off-site and I'm doing some local backups, that data is actually moving and meeting the schedules and expectations I've set. Next slide, please. And most recently, and at the end of our last validation, we were looking at the ability to configure and manage all your storage pools within inside TSM. And this is another shot. The gray part shows the pool administration view from Operations Center, but the forward part shows the ability to use the same tools that you were familiar with in creating your different pools before cloud. Now that the cloud at-rest interface is available, and different cloud providers such as Amazon S3 can be simply selected in a drop-down, click on it, and configure your pools the same way you would do with your traditional backup pools. Next slide. And kind of to wrap up the whole cloud type solution in our validation anyways, we looked at the ability to do self-service. And this is a web-based portal that's available to any user. You don't have to have any kind of backup experience to use this. It's pretty intuitive, launched right from the web. You log in, hit next please. Allows you to browse your backups and select the files that you should be familiar with, because you're used to seeing them in your directory structure in your local workspace. It has the ability to select time and date stamps. I didn't want to bore everybody with all the screenshots, but we really think these components are pretty key to ease of management improvements, modernization, the new virtualization protection, and cloud-based storage, and making Spectrum Protect a really nice solution for that. I think that might wrap up my slides. If you hit next, we're back to the Operations Center, and one more slide. And I think that wraps it up for me. I think I'm going to be turning it over to Greg Van Hise.
Actually, Vinny, this is Daniel. Quick question for you. And by the way, very, very good charts here and good data. One of your charts, you talked about the considerations from a client being around security. And you can certainly saw that a couple of years ago in the public cloud. But as we really see the hybrid cloud gaining steam, right, customers have public components, dedicated clouds internally. Can you talk a bit about security and really what you see in a hybrid cloud environment?
Sure. Well, I think security just keeps percolating up to the top in a lot of our research these days. You keep hearing about security breaches, whether it's on-site in a primary data center, cloud, or hybrid cloud, right? So the ability to have the same kind of protection you have internally as you start to leave the four walls of your data center is important. Any security you can add these days is critical, but obviously encrypting data in transit, encrypting data at rest, the ability to apply roles and permissions in the application that you're using. I mean, if you encrypt your data and anybody can restore it, you kind of negate any kind of encryption. So the enterprise approach is important, right? You have to use the same governance when you start to move to hybrid and public storage and recovery options. You want to have that same kind of governance in place.
Yeah, Vinny, that's very important, right? And we see the same thing within IBM Resiliency Services. And you hit the key word. It's the same governance, right? It's the same strategy that you have to have in place. The technology, the back end, the locations might be different, but you have to stay very focused on keeping that governance, keeping your data protection policies the same. You know, you modify, right? But you should treat data protection in the public cloud no different than you would on a dedicated server in your environment, right? So very
Absolutely.
good, Vinny. Thank you very much, and I hope you can stick around for a bit of a Q&A section.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, Vinny. So we're going to spend a couple of minutes on IBM Resiliency Services. I do want to try my best here and keep it in context of Vinny's charts. As Vinny indicated, you see a lot of early adopter in cloud around backup and around disaster recovery. So we can talk about a little bit of that and a little bit about what we do, and then I do want to talk about how Spectrum Protect has evolved our backup as a service business. So when you think about IBM Resiliency Services, one of the strengths we focus on is innovating our clients' environment, especially around resiliency, right? So if you think about old school disaster recovery, very manual, very tape-based, right? How are we recovering those environments? You declare, you would bring your data from tape, right? You would load up on servers and really kind of have bare metal, starting from scratch recovery. That was a while back. Now we're moving forward into complete orchestration and automation of a recovery environment, right? You have disaster recovery as a service, which I think is mystifying quite significantly, right? Where we can fully automate and orchestrate a customer's what we would call runbook environment, where you can take the recovery environment, replicate that data, and have click-to-restore capability, click-to-recover capability at the application level. And when we work with our clients around disaster recovery as a service, around backup as a service, we tend to see exactly what Vinny was describing in his charts. And that is, we're most often than not the first foray into cloud for these enterprise class customers. And we're seeing it in an area where they do it to reduce cost, and not in the sense, I think people think, oh, cloud is cheaper, and that's not necessarily true. But where you utilize it, it can be more cost effective and efficient. You get a better dollar per value in cloud. And we're seeing this a lot in clients' remote offices. You think about a traditional data protection practice in remote offices, you still have to have a tape library. You'd have to still have someone manually take out the tape, or call your tape recall, or your truck service to pick it up. Now by backing that stuff either to a local appliance, then to the cloud, or directly to the cloud, makes that much more efficient. You don't need to have that physical infrastructure on site. So we're seeing a lot of innovation there on those locations. Same with recovery as a service. We're seeing that same type of information where you want to utilize the cloud. And what the cloud gives you from a disaster recovery as a service perspective is really the ability to use that compute layer when you want it and only have to pay for it when you use it, right? And so that's a huge advancement. And as you think about recovery and you think about disaster recovery, right, or data recovery, you're only as good as how well you've exercised and tested the last time, right? So the disaster recovery as a service in the cloud and backup as a service into the cloud gives you a lot more flexibility now on testing in different applications, testing a use case on a certain system, because now that compute power is available and you're only being charged, for that 30-minute block of time you're using it, or the hours that you're using it. Unlike before, you need to have that full dedicated environment or access to that dedicated environment, which was very costly. So both backup and DR become very, very good use cases in the cloud for those reasons. We'll go to the next slide here. This is a little bit about IBM Resiliency Services. We've been in business for a while, right? 50 years of business continuity and disaster recovery experience, protecting over 10,000 clients. You'll see here we reference our data centers. And what's interesting about that is if you look at the new world here of recovery, I'll talk about our two components of our business I've been referencing here. Backup as a service, a vast majority of that is involved in the public cloud and on customer prems that don't even touch our data centers. So if you think about that and disaster recovery as a service, much in the same manner, using the various public providers out there for cloud, that 300 plus data centers doesn't even scratch the surface as the total volume of data centers we're engaged in work on. We have 2.5 exabytes of customer data under management. I mean, these are astounding numbers. I think I have a slide referencing here the amount of data and the amount of backups we do just with Spectrum Protect alone, right, as a full integrated backup service provider. So just tons and tons of information we have under management, tons and tons of programs with 100% success rate in meeting our commitments to our clients who've declared for recovery. We'll go to the next slide here. Take a couple of seconds here on our approach. We call this our 7-layer framework. And if you think about how we segment our businesses, right, every business you can fit into this framework, we traditionally, as IT professionals, focused on the data and the application layer, a little bit on the technology layer, right? And we said, okay, if I need to back up data from this system, or I need to back up data from this application, right, data's in there sandwiched between those two in the middle, and I need to recover this technology. Our approach is much broader than that. We look at the facilities all the way through the strategy and vision of the company, right? How are the people working? How are your business processes working? Are your own facilities resilient, right? Going from an HVAC unit, the business we're in, right, all the way to a PDU, all the way to do your people have a place to work if there's an event of an emergency? So we encompass that whole end-to-end of the framework when we think about protecting resiliency business. We'll go to the next slide here. So this is a little bit about Spectrum Protect, right? It's fair to say we're agnostic. We're agnostic to the backup service platform. We're agnostic to a technology platform. We're agnostic to the cloud provider platform. Spectrum Protect is a very large component of our business. We use it for protecting data in the cloud that was born in the cloud, protecting data from the customer's prem to the cloud. With the latest release of Spectrum Protect, we found that for us, it was driving significantly less infrastructure. This drives in a pennies per gig business, right? This drives our price and our cost down to our consumers, which is very significant, reduces our footprint on the floors. We manage 10x more data as a result. We achieve a 5x higher ingest rate. Well, this is a very key one, I think, that gets under referenced, which is we can back up more data in a shorter window, right, using Spectrum Protect, so latest release. So it's a fantastic value in that regard. And we say here we achieve a 98.5% success rate. That's actually our service level agreement. I'm proud to say that we surpassed that quite significantly. And next slide here. When we look at data protection, right, and I'll just focus on a little bit of a new bullet here, and you're going to start seeing some more news about this in the next coming weeks. We really believe in this methodology called software-defined resiliency. And that's taking that orchestration and that automation that I spoke to you about, DRAS, combining it with analytics and cognitive computing. You've all heard IBM talk about Watson, right? How do we learn from our own environment? How do we learn from our own customer's environment? Use that orchestration, use that automation to bring the whole entire recovery environment faster, more cost-effective, across your entire hybrid IT environment, right? So for us, Amazon, Azure, SoftLayer, customer prem, IBM data center, co-location provider, you name it, we look for a consistent methodology to protect data and recover that data and restore those environments. Next slide. All right, and here's I think the moment most of you have been waiting for, right? What's new in 7.1.7? I'm very happy to have Greg talk to us. As I mentioned, I keep saying this. He's a master inventor. I think that's one of the coolest things, and I got to figure out how to get one of those on my title. My kids would love it. So, Greg, thank you very much for your time, and I'll pass it to you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Daniel. Always good doing these sessions with you. All right, folks. Hey, just thought I'd start with kind of a quick reminder to kick things off as far as Spectrum Protect It's part of a larger Spectrum storage family. You can think about us as a common data protection platform across virtual machines, physical machines, broad list of OS platform support, wide variety of applications, database, mail, ERP systems, and then more specifically to what we'll be focusing on today, different deployment models, some of the more traditional ones that we support, as well as robo environments with considerations like what Daniel was mentioning. And there's a wide variety of public, private, hybrid cloud deployments that we support. So with that, let's jump into the next slide. And when we look at some of the, say, recent enhancements, maybe to start with on the chart, what this session is really about is the right-hand portion, what's new in 717. We're announcing some new capabilities that we'll be talking about today that are predominantly focused on enhancing object storage usage, and that's both around expanding the support matrix for what object stores we support, as well as providing some additional performance improvements. And I have a bit more details on what we have coming out on that in the next couple slides, so I'll maybe hold a little bit of those details. But also what we're doing in 717, and I'll pause here for a minute, but I think Mike Barton may have posted, or he's going to post, a link to the announcement blog URL out there as well. So you'll be able to refer to that, and later this week, actually September 16th, you'll be able to get a copy of our latest code. In addition to object store support, we're enabling copies of our deduplicated directory containers to actually be saved off to take for use cases like repair, compliance, air gap considerations. And also we're extending our current LDAP support with authentication management associated with allowing us to utilize a common namespace. So there's some security improvements around LDAP support, and also expanding the use cases around our directory containers. Before I go into a bit more details on 717, just wanted to step back a bit, and if you look at these recent enhancements, I think there's a couple of key summary points from this. From a development process perspective, we've changed how we're delivering capabilities. Today we're using more of an agile model with continuous delivery, and you can see on here we have the quarterly deliverables that we've been doing for around the last 1.5 years. And also we're using basically a corporate-wide framework called IBM Design Thinking that allows us to really, I think, get better interaction with our users, help solving their problems, and providing a better, I guess, overall user experience. So that's been a real focus for us, and I think that's improved our deliveries. And then from what we're really delivering in some of the key focus areas, one is, I've been in this business a long time, and it's always an objective to reduce the overall infrastructure costs required to support data protection, right? And this can be from perspective of optimizing backup server resources, the backup storage space that we use, as well as the network that we use to transmit this data across. And there's maybe a couple reminders. Over the last year and a half, we've dramatically improved our data deduplication capabilities, our scalability, to where in the labs we've validated or tested daily ingest rates of 100 terabytes of data from client machines, and also we're able to replicate that off to a hot standby DR server within the 24-hour window. And, quote, server scalability ranges of up to a petabyte of stored data, and that would be a petabyte of deduplicated compressed data, which, when you think about how much data we're protecting, that could be, depending on ratios and stuff, you could think about maybe 4 petabytes or so of protected data. So of course, this has been a big improvement our customers have liked. We do work with deduplication appliances very well today, and we are finding, though, that a lot of our customers are liking the embedded data reduction capabilities that we provide, and those actually fit very nice into the cloud capabilities that we'll be looking at as well.
So, Greg, if I could interrupt just to comment here, right? And it's just a point of thank you amongst friends. The client-side deduplication that we've been seeing has allowed us to significantly reduce the cost of infrastructure, right? So that is very key, and it's a great benefit. Also, your use and continued improvement on object storage integration, we've also seen as a great benefit in our client base. So just two things that we're seeing right in line with this chart. So thank you.
Right on. Thanks, Daniel. And just a couple other gee whiz points, and we'll get on to some of the others. But I've personally been working with some customers that have had upwards of 40 petabytes of data that they're managing with Spectrum Protect across physical and virtual environments. Other points, we have some of our larger VMware customers protecting between 5 and 15,000 VMs. So we scale up well, and I think maybe we also have some Aspera discussion. Maybe just a quick point there. We wasn't part of 717, but it is a WAN optimization technology that we made available, embedded into Spectrum Protect in our 716 release. We're the first product to integrate Aspera. It's an alternate communication protocol to TCP called FAST. Their fast and secure protocol. And some of those gee whiz numbers that we've looked at there, it shines in impaired networks with higher latency, packet loss kind of things, and depending on the specifics. But there's things that we went from hundreds of hours to, I'll say, a few hours to do backups, right? In scenarios like transmitting 6 terabytes of data over the line. So lots of good things around all the optimizations that we're doing. And just real quick on the simplifying user experiences, backup administrators, you can look at our operations center. We have a great administrative interface. There's YouTube demos. There's demos that we have out on our website that you can look at as far as what it looks like. Virtual server administrators have been a focus for the past 4 or 5 years. VMware administrators, we have integration with the vSphere web client. We're allowing today now the VMware administrator to configure data protection using their native VMware controls. We call that VMware tagging. Integration with vStorage API. So been a focus, continues to be a focus to support these virtualized environments, and you'll be seeing some more Hyper-V stuff coming out from us as well. Daniel mentioned our self-service file restore portal. Thank you, Daniel, for pointing that out, and I think that's been very well received for the VMware administrators. Okay, let's move on for a minute. Some of the top use cases today that we see in IBM Cloud Backup are illustrated in the next chart. And maybe even before I talk about specific use cases, just another quick review. Spectrum Protect support of object storage includes not only what we're talking about today with 717, where we're announcing our support for Amazon S3 support. We also have provided in the prior releases support for on-prem deployments of OpenStack Swift, and we've supported IBM's cloud object storage in public cloud object storage in SoftLayer, and we've supported our IBM cloud object store based on CleverSafe. So we're continuing to expand out our list of supported object storage, and today we're making native support available for Amazon S3, which we've been hearing a lot from our customers as far as a key requirement for us. And also, if you note in these pictures, there's a local cache that's illustrated in here, and that really is a cache that the Spectrum Protect server can use that really helps minimize client backup windows, I'll say, by decoupling the client backup from our puts or our writes to the cloud, right? So we're able to cache up some of this data locally and then to minimize client backup windows and then send it off to the cloud. Number of good use cases associated with cloud object storage. These can range from just using cloud for the primary backup copy, top picture, to using cloud for the DR copy of your data, middle picture, to using the cloud object storage for long-term retention, that being the bottom illustration. And we certainly all get the cloud object storage. It does a good job, I'd say, of providing cost-effective scale-out, elastic capacities for infrequently accessed objects. And, things like backup and archive objects fit that bill pretty well. All right, if we could go to the next slide. Just to drill down a bit more on the performance side of things, with our latest release, 717, we've improved the performance quite a bit. And so in addition to having that local cache that I mentioned on the previous chart, we've updated how we're doing I/O to object storage. And that can be both from during the backup side of the process to be able to aggregate up a lot of these deduplicated compressed chunks that we're creating into larger objects, around a gigabyte in size. And so object stores work well. Larger objects we're we're taking our deduplicated compressed data, aggregating that together. And from a restore side, we're able to do some asynchronous reads to help that process. And we have some benchmark numbers on here, different workloads, different access characteristics. VMware is a good example where we do block level backups, break up disk chunks into 128 meg objects, and we're seeing around a 7 terabyte an hour backup rate. So improvements there, and optimizations that we have here apply specifically to IBM's cloud object storage and Amazon S3 storage. So some good stuff there that we're doing as far as improving performance and specifically available in 717. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. What we wanted to do, so with the focus on 717, give you a couple user experiences that we've had. Neergy, they're a key Spectrum Protect partner, one of Iceland's leading systems integrators, managed service providers. They provide backup as a service, recovery as a service, and help customers move their data to their cloud. Personally, I've worked with one of their employees, Peter. He has an excellent understanding of data protection, Spectrum Protect, et cetera. He's part of the group that did some early beta testing with our Amazon cloud. And I think from Neergy's perspective, they see leveraging the cloud, as a very cost-effective consideration for a number of their customers, specifically mid-market, right, as far as being able to eliminate the requirement to maintain off-site IT facilities and equipment, and providing, significant significant cost reductions when you think about the CapEx side of things. So they've tested our Amazon S3 support, and then also, just as another example, they've given us, from one of their customers, used our inline deduplication, and then with 715 we came out with inline compression, which had the nice effect for that customer of reducing their space requirements by 60%, right? So combinations of Spectrum Protect, data reduction, incremental forever, deduplication, compression, we feel we're market leading as far as optimizations we can make and efficiencies for saving data on storage, which can include cloud storage as well. So when we talk about these object storage support, we're sending in compressed, deduplicated data into those, which can again translate into good cost savings. All right, if we go to the next chart. Cobalt Iron, another key business partner for Spectrum Protect. I think they're recognized, I would say, both within IBM and by our customer base for their expertise and ability to very efficiently offer data protection services. To me, they've standardized the infrastructure for data protection very well and support hybrid cloud deployments. To me, I'd characterize that they've actually effectively created a SaaS offering for Spectrum Protect that dramatically simplifies how data protection is consumed and managed. Just like Resiliency services, they manage millions of backups each month, very high success rates. They were part of our 717 beta program and validated our use of Amazon's S3 storage. And in addition, I think generally available, when I talk to Richard Spurlock, their CTO and founder, he'll tell me always about new use cases where they're managing, customers' data in using Spectrum Protect in Microsoft Cloud, in Google's Cloud, and of course in IBM's SoftLayer Cloud. They have offerings there as well as AWS servers. So they've been able to support a number of different cloud configurations, which is certainly of interest from our perspective. So maybe in summary, I think tried to highlight some of our new cloud object storage capabilities. We've introduced some new performance improvements and support for Amazon S3. They'll be available later this week. We've had a good beta program for 717, talked a bit about Neergy's and Cobalt Iron experiences. And I tried to remind you a bit about, in addition to 717, there's been a lot of good improvements that we've done in Spectrum Protect in the last 1.5 years, and just tried to touch on those a bit. And certainly glad to follow up on any of this with you if you have any further questions. So with that, turn it back to Daniel.
Greg, thank you very much. As I mentioned, for our business alone, right, the ingest rate change client-side dedupe, the support of object storage, and the performance improvements we've seen on object storage is a difference maker. So I can't thank you and your team enough for continuing that development and being focused in the right area. With that, I would like to defer to Devin and Michael to see if there's any questions we could collectively ask as a team, as Vinny, Greg, and I are here available for a few more minutes.
Yes, there are a couple of questions. We have one from Marco Villa. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Marco. He says, or he asks, when we send a backup to the cloud, can you send it with the vSphere interface, or does it have to be done through Spectrum Protect, Operations Center, or one of the other interfaces? And so, Greg, I think that's a question for you.
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, just to clarify, so we do have the vSphere web client interface that we can initiate the backups of. So to your point, a VMware administrator can initiate the backup of a VM from the vSphere interface, and then that will be, you know, I'll say transparent to them, sent up to, it can be, the Spectrum Protect backup administrator can configure that to be sent to cloud storage. So VMware administrator knows that he's backing up a VM, and the backup administrator has configured the environment in the back to use, you know, deduplicated disk pools, cloud storage, etc. And so that can be targeted from the VMware interface, initiate backups, and those can land in cloud storage.
Okay, super. Thank you. And then we have another one from Tom Cowley for Vinny. What are your thoughts on extensions to Spectrum Protect, such as Predator, that enable people to restore from cloud backups into cloud compute layer and cloud compute in soft layer and other capabilities like that?
Sure. So yeah, that's actually kind of completing some of the picture in this whole paradigm, right? The ability to be able to restore backup data from my corporate compute environment, move it to the cloud, and then if I need to, whether it's for DR or even test dev or other types of scenarios, be able to spin up a recovery environment inside the cloud is definitely, we definitely see a lot of interest in that. I think maybe the resiliency services folks might be able to add a little bit to that and what their capabilities are. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. Daniel, do you have a comment on that? This is about how to use backup data basically to restore in the cloud.
We do it. I don't know other than that. And I'm glad I didn't get the question that was asked to Greg, because that was way over my technical ability. I mean, you still have to have the backup environment into the cloud, right? So it's not just a simple data repository and it's storing there. If you want to bring up the compute layer, you need to make sure you have the backup environment up and running, and it can bring it to an environment, typically an application environment that can run that data. So like all things resiliency, it's only as good as you exercise and test. So I would not wait until you need something to see if it works. It would be definitely something I would do as environments get set up.
And that's also another area of cost containment, right? So that if I need to test something or make sure I have a backup, if I can spin it up temporarily in the cloud, it's kind of like the original use cases of cloud bursting or doing application development. If I can test or restore my infrastructure to the cloud and then move it back at my convenience, those are things that we're definitely seeing people have a lot of interest in in our research.
Yeah, and Mike, and then the fine print would be, or this is Greg, just going like, say, backing up a VMware environment, restoring it, we'll say in a VMware cloud, like IBM, like VMware on IBM Cloud. Those are all good use cases. And then when you're restoring in the cloud, I'll say coming from different environments, say like backing up from VMware into restoring into AWS, or pick your public cloud provider, then there's a bit more fine print to look at and kind of think about some of those conversions and different formats and partners, whether predator cobalt resiliency. There's lots of ways to start solving those, but there gets to be a bit more fine print kind of thinking through some of those use cases when you start going cross environments.
Good points. Thanks very much. We do have one last question from Gerd Becker at Impalis. He asks, I believe that the backup performance into cloud storage is okay and the cost is minimized, but what about restore and recovery? Cloud storage normally is, there it goes. Yeah, cloud storage normally is slow and expensive when it has to be read. So I think, Greg, if you might want to take a first shot at that, and maybe Daniel would have some comments on that too, basically about restore and recovery aspects of cloud storage.
Sure, I think it's a great question, and it's a good caution to research. We provided some benchmarks that I had on previous chart for backup performance and restore performance. So you always want to look at your requirements and map those against what we've seen. And to the point, right, object storage, you will, I think, today see, we'll say maybe slower performance, a bit slower performance than you would say with a local disk, a deduplicated disk pool. And so there is considerations there. We've done some updates in 7.1.7 to how we access data for read purposes to try to get a number of IOs going on in parallel with our asynchronous read support, but there is considerations there, and we do have, from a Spectrum Protect perspective, have a set of folks that we can work with you to map out the requirements that you have and whether object storage can meet your recovery requirements.
Yeah, so Greg, this is Daniel. So this comes down to a fundamental question that I seem to ask a lot of my clients, which is why are you backing up your data? Right? I mean, it seems like an easy answer, but if your intent is for data protection, file level restore, you're going to have a very different answer than if your intent is for recovery. And what you do with that data, right? If you're using it for recovery, you want to make sure you can bring that data to quick storage, right? You want to be able to migrate that data, and that's a lot when we talk about orchestration inside our business. It's automating that process of moving data between storage tiers for faster performance. You want to talk about storing that data long-term on low-end, cheap disk, right? Because you're once you get past 30 days, that you're probably not going to do a whole lot of file recovery, right? So you think about operational restore capability on disk, right? You think about long-term retention in lower-performing, lower-cost disks, and being able to move that data to higher performance disks when you're exercising and declaring for very specific applications.
Completely agree.
Okay, good. So there's been a bunch more questions come in. So those of you who posted them will certainly get back to you via email and include answers. There is one question, though, that I think Vinny might want to address, and this is from James Simon. Are companies currently using on-site and off-site tape like them? Are they migrating to the cloud to stop using the tape altogether? In other words, instead of keeping the two tape pools of IBM Spectrum Protect and just going to the cloud. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, again, so the answer depends. We also did a report on modern tape, and modern tape is pretty reliable and pretty cost effective. However, when you have human intervention mixed in, that's when the reliability challenges come into play, right? So if you can replicate or move your data into the cloud, I think you have the ability to remove some of the things that are the greatest causes of not being able to recover, or having corruption in the data or damage to the data. Initially, with some of the smaller point solutions, their first hooks into the cloud-based backup space were to replicate off into the cloud for long-term storage. So that's definitely where it started, and now we're seeing it evolve even further, and that is to complete the cycle with our DR as a service, and that is, I have a dev environment, a VMware environment in the cloud. I'm pushing my data to the cloud. I'm pushing it to the cloud with the ability for my backup environment to understand it and be able to recover the data there. So the idea is to recover as local as possible, and we're definitely seeing a trend towards some archiving in the cloud. There's still a combination. That's why we put that 3-circle slide up. It's really evaluate your design and leverage all the components you have at your disposal. So it's not always just a quick switch over. It's usually a journey that allows you to start to create an environment that gives you all that flexibility. So we're seeing people move from tape to the cloud, and again, that trend started in the smaller point solutions and now has moved to solutions that have the full management capabilities like Spectrum Protect.
Yeah, Vinny, this is Daniel. We're seeing the same thing, right? If that data is being used to recover, especially specifically in a disaster